to session 19. In this session we're going to talk about soloing, many different kinds of aspects of soloing. We're going to talk about what makes up a good solo, melody, rhythm, the harmonic structure of it needs to have balance, and most of all you need to say something that's meaningful. What doesn't make a good solo, and a lot of traps that guitar players fall into. How to build up your own creativity, how to start hearing guitar parts and being able to put them out through your fingers. We're going to talk about soloing in various different playing styles and get you a lot of good practice in doing those. In the How Music Works section, we're going to learn about getting our fingers to play the melodies that we are hearing in our head and choosing the right ideas, taking good melodies and putting them in different playing situations so that we can make the most out of the little that we learn. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, let's talk about soloing or improvising. What does improvising mean? That means just making up off the top of your head a melody that you can play along with the songs that you're going for. Okay, so you are making it up on the spot. Sometimes you can kind of have something pre-made up, but most all of this is improvising, choosing the right notes to play. There are many different ways that you can approach soloing. Okay, first of all, you can get some key bits of information from the key. What's the key signature telling you? What key are we in? Doesn't matter what the first chord of the song is. What's that key information? That's what it may or may not go with the first chord of the song, but that key information is telling you what major scale that you're able to solo around in and get the sounds that you're going for. Another way to look at it is to use patterns, like our pentatonic scale patterns that we learned earlier. Okay, we can use those somewhat. It's a good thing to whip out, but we don't want to just go straight down those patterns. That doesn't make a very interesting solo. We can also be guided by the chord tones used in the progression that you're working at. That's probably the key way. The chord tones are vital to telling you what notes are safe at any point in time as you're going through these solo ideas. Or you can use all of these techniques simultaneously. Well, let's first talk about what is making up a good solo. How come some solos are good? How come other ones just don't sound like they fit right? There's a couple of key aspects to it. First is melody. You want a catchy, noteworthy melody as you're playing it. You want to create something that's memorable. You want everything to fit together. So first thing is melody. Second thing is balance. You don't want to be playing some things up high, some things up low, some things fast, some things slow, and just be jerking all around. That creates confusion in the listener and doesn't end up being a very melodic solo. Third thing is you need to say something. One of my good friends is a guitarist by the name of David Moyes, who used to be a guitarist for the group Air Supply back in the 80s. And David was telling me a story one time about he's up on stage down in Australia, I believe, in Sydney, where Air Supply is from. And they're playing, and I forget whether it was the manager of the band or the owner of the club or something. He's back there playing a solo. He's got his eyes closed. And he opens his eyes, and there's this guy standing right in front of him saying, "Speak to me!" And he relates that story about not just musically mumbling, not just playing whatever pops into your head, but by saying something when you play and when you try and do a solo. It's a little bit like a chef trying to make a good meal. You have to get all these aspects just right. Now, we've talked about many different things. We've talked about pentatonic patterns, talked about major scales and keys, but now we're going to use all those tools to try and see what makes up a good solo and a good melody. Here's some things that guitar players fall into these traps all the time when trying to make a solo, and these are the things that don't make a good solo. One is finger patterns. It's great, all these pentatonic patterns that we've learned and we've got them underneath our fingers. That's great for when we're rehearsing and trying to learn these and get those in our tool belt. But when it's time to actually play a solo, you don't want to be playing finger patterns. It just doesn't work to be a very musical solo. The second thing that guitar players think makes a good solo is speed. And that's just a trap that we guitar players fall into. You do not have to play screaming fast in order to create a good, memorable solo. That's just not how it's done. If you listen to the solos on the songs that you're hearing on the radio, chances are the guy's not just ripping through fast licks. He's saying something with his melody. The third is that people fall into the trap of thinking it has to be complex. If I want to make a really hip solo, I have to make this big complex things, use all these color tones, and it'll end up being a good solo. Not necessarily. Quite oftentimes it just ends up being a confusing mess because you don't have the right amount of balance and melody in what's going on. Okay? So what a lot of players say is, "Help, I don't know what to play." Well, here's where the tool bag of all these musical tools that we've been trying to cram into you these last few sessions are going to come into play. Okay, we're going to talk about creativity. Okay, creativity is taking all the tools that we've learned so far and using them to make a solo, not just putting them out there, putting these pentatonic patterns out there and playing that. That doesn't make a good solo. We're going to use them to actually create something that's memorable. Okay, just like a poem isn't made up by just choosing random words from the dictionary, so a good solo isn't made up of just choosing random patterns and putting them together. I heard someone say, and I've always thought this, in soloing, there are no wrong notes, just poor choices. And I think that is so true. There are no wrong notes, just poor choices. So let's learn a couple of key concepts to choosing right notes when we solo. Okay? The first is, look at your key. What key is this song in? Now, sometimes it can be deceiving. A C chord can be in the key of C, as well as in the key of F, and also in the key of G. So you can't necessarily look at the chords all the time. You need to gather some information from all these different parts, and a big one is the key. What key are you looking at? Okay? If the song has one flat in it, chances are you could pretty much noodle around anywhere in F, and you'd be in the right key. A look at the key gives us a good framework that we can start building our solo from. What major scale can we use in order to start doing it? Next, we want to look at the chords. Now, here's a very big key of what to play when you're doing a solo. Look at these chords. If the chords are like a C, go into an A minor, well, what are the chord tones in each of these chords as they're going by? As long as that C chord is going by, you know that you can play a C, E, and a G, and you are standing on the safest pitches you can ever stand on as a solo. Now, playing it safe doesn't necessarily make a great solo, but it's a good place to start. You know what notes are safe. If the next chord is, let's say, an A minor 7th, well, that has an A, C, E, and a G. Well, what is common between a C chord and an A minor and 7th? That's C, E, and G. So I can just play C through those entire 2 bars, and it'll work, and it'll sound correct. So look at those chord tones. All those chord spelling exercises that were so frustrating, here's where they start coming into play, to be able to know the chord tones of the chords that you're trying to solo over the top of. For example, let's take a look at example number 1 on these chord tone issues. Okay, we go from 2 bars of C major 7th to 2 bars of an F major 7th. Okay, those 2 chords would be like this. There's a C major 7th, then an F major 7th would be like this. Now the notes, what notes are in a C major 7th? Well, it's a C, E, G, and a B. So I know if I stay on just those 4 tones through those first 2 bars, I'm not going to clash with anything. I might not make the most beautiful music in the world, but I'm at least not going to play a wrong note. Okay, F major 7th. What's the framework? What are the pillars of that we need to be paying attention there? F, A, C, and an E. So when it's time to change over to that F, what has changed? Well, maybe the E is turned to an F, maybe the G is turned to an A, different things like that. Those are ways, little secrets that we can use to make a good solo in what we do. Okay, now let's fire up the band here, and I'll try and play those chord tones as we're going through them so you can hear how the chord tones change. Okay, so this is number 2 in your book. I'm just going to play the chord tones. Great. Okay, now those are just using the chord tones. Okay, now we're going to try and go a little bit more of a complex chord progression, and we're going to stretch those out a little bit longer and give you an idea of what other things that we can do with that solo. So we're going to make each of those 4 measures double the length. So you can have C for 2 bars now, A minor for 2 bars, D minor 7th for 2 bars, and G7 for 2 bars. Okay, so let's hear how that sounds. Now, it wasn't the most exciting melody in the world, but I stayed real safe. I played those chord tones. And that's where it starts. You don't just wake up one day and suddenly you're magically able to play a great solo. It starts by learning those chord tones. Okay? Now, let's do it in a different style. So I need to think, what can I do differently that would be more appropriate in that style. Now, the next style we're going to cover is kind of a rock thing. So I'm going to kick on my distortion here, maybe a little bit of delay, maybe crank it down here a little bit, get more of a distorted sound. Let's try that. Same chords, I'm just going to change up the feel of it a little bit. Okay? Now, granted, that's not the most hippest example you'll hear on the radio, but that's basically the concept. I changed to a rock and roll style. I need to get my guitar sounding the way I want it to sound. I started using a lot of bends and things, which are very characteristic in rock playing. Okay, let's do one more. You want to be appropriate to the style that you're in, and not just play the same thing over and over again. Let's do one more. This one is kind of just a soft rock thing. So maybe I'll warm up my sound a little bit, put it on upper pickup here, throw in a little chorus. Let's see what that sounds like. Now there, I was pretty much sticking right close to those chord tones, trying to make little melodies around them, but I was sticking pretty close to those chord tones. Okay? Remember, to say something, not just to noodle around in a particular key. You want to say something. So let's talk about, in our How Music Works section, about hearing melodies and being able to translate them through our fingers. Remember the items that we need to keep track of when we're soloing. Are we creating a good melody? Are we actually saying something? Are we in the right key? Are we using the right chord tones with that? When you're playing your patterns, don't just run through your patterns up and down. Try and make some music with it. Vary up the rhythm. Vary up the notes that you're playing. Okay, let's talk about creativity for a second. Hearing what you want to play. I wish I could say there's a magic pill to where I could give you the secret and you could just automatically hear what notes you need to play and be able to play them. The only way I found that you're able to hear a melody and then be able to play it back is just by sheer trial and error. You just do it a bunch of times. And you get better at choosing the right notes. Remember that saying? Good solo is made up of good choices. There are no wrong notes, just poor choices. So we're going to learn about how to choose better notes when we do our solos. Okay? It all starts with hearing. Okay? So we're going to do a little bit of ear training exercise for you to hear some different melodies. I'm going to play something, and then I want you to play it back to me. Okay? I'm going to start just up here at the 5th fret. Okay? So see if you can play what I'm playing. 1, 2, ready, go. Then your time, 2, 3, 4. Again. Now your time. Go. Now your time. Ready, again. 1, 2, 3. Let's start on a different note. 1, 2, ready, and you play. 1, 2, 3. Let's bend that note. You play it. Again. 2, 3, 4. Ear training is of utmost importance. We're only able by time here just to do a little bit of example of it. But try and pick out melodies on the radio of songs that you know. Try and pick them out on your guitar. And yes, you'll make a bunch of mistakes at first. You'll sound stupid. A lot of folks, they get all bent out of shape of sounding stupid when they play a solo. Well, you're going to sound stupid for a while. That's just how it is. So you practice in your bedroom or whatever, and you don't get too bent out of shape with how you sound because you're learning. You're learning how to walk, just like a toddler is learning how to walk. And that's what you're doing with soloing. So don't get too bent out of shape that you try and go for one note and you accidentally hit another one that was not the note that you were intending. That's all part of learning and growing. Okay? Creativity is work. It's hard work. And the good news is that the more you do it, the better you get at it. If you're not hearing anything and you don't know what to play, well, start off with a finger pattern. See if that doesn't give you some ideas as you're going through it. But basically, it's just a lot of sheer repetition and getting better at choosing the melodies that you want to do. Here's your assignment for this week. I want you to practice soloing over the jam tracks exercises for session 19. Look at the key, look at the chord tones and the style, and try and derive a good, recognizable melody from that. Remember, it's not about speed, complexity, or doing finger patterns. It's about creating something that says something. Okay? I also want you to practice the ear training exercises with the jam-along tracks to help you train your ear. A little bit goes a long way in training our ear. The mechanics of playing the guitar are pretty straightforward. It's the knowing what to play that is the tricky part. Some start up high, some down low. Start different places on the neck and see what happens. Okay? We'll see you next time. Okay, welcome to the workshop time. Let's see if we can put some of these soloing techniques that we've learned about into action. So this one is going to be a lot of listening to tracks, and you try and play a melody. I won't play too much. I want you to try and pick out a melody as we go through these. Okay? Remember, what makes a good solo? Melody, balance, say something when you play, not just playing finger patterns. Speed and complexity don't make a good solo. Okay? Here we go. Let's try a few. Let's start with number 2. Or actually, no, let's start with number 3. C. And you try and solo over these. How'd you do on creating a solo? Did you get some ideas from that? We're going to do that one more time, give you a little bit more opportunity to get some chances of playing that. Okay, let's do it one more time. Okay, now we're going to take the same chord progression, same exact chord progression, we're going to put it in a different style. This time it's going to be kind of more of a rock style, so try and use some bending of some notes. Okay, it kind of has an 8th note pulse, so see if you can maybe do something with that. Let's try it. Let's try it one more time, give you another chance to go through it. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's try one more. This is a soft rock one. Okay, let's try this exercise. Okay, now we're going to do these exercises one more time. This time I'm not going to play at all. We're just going to let the tracks run. Okay, starting on number 3, the jazz one that starts in C and A minor. Great. Okay, let's take a look at the next one, number 4. Great, how'd you do? Let's take a look at that next one. This one changes to a little bit of a soft rock style, so be ready for that. Now, there are plenty more exercises in your Jam Along CDs to give you practice in soloing. I would encourage you to go through all of them, different styles, different keys, give you all the practice that you need. Let me give you some encouragement. Good soloing takes time and lots of trial and error. You didn't learn to walk overnight, and you're not going to learn how to play a solo overnight either. It takes a lot of just doing it over and over and over again until you find out what works. It's like you're putting words together to start forming sentences. That's how soloing is. So don't be discouraged with yourself. You're going to sound bad for a while. That's kind of how soloing is. If you let that discourage you, then you'll never venture out and start doing what you need to do. So I'll go ahead and see you next time.